Voice, the politics show made by young people for young people. This week we'll be looking at one of the biggest and most debatable issues for young people in the UK, student loans. Is going to university worth getting in debt for, or is an apprenticeship the way forward? Joining us this week we have Matthew Giles, a Media and Communications Officer who is also a representative of the North East People's Assembly Against Austerity. Hello Matthew. Kalego Hips, a student from America studying abroad in Sunderland with some views on our tuition fees.
How you doing?
Kalego. And Deputy Chairman of the North East Conservative Future, Kevin Wilson.
Hi there.
Hello Kevin. Okay, so the first topic we have to discuss is student loans, one of the most protested issues students face at the moment. Before I go to my guests, we have spoken to a few students at Sunderland University about what they think of the fees.
To cut tuition fees for university or raise them to £16,000 a year. What's your opinion on this?
I think if they raised it to 16,000, so many people wouldn't go to uni, and I don't think it's fair. I think everyone should have the opportunity to go to uni if they wanted.
I think definitely they shouldn't raise them. It puts people off university. I know when I was leaving college and deciding to come to university, it was the first year where they put them up to £9,000. A lot of people said, oh, I don't want to go to university, I'll end up in too much debt. They put it up, it's going to get even worse. People are going to be scared to go to university because they never think they'll get out of debt. And it just puts people off education and trying to do what they really want to do.
I think raising it wouldn't necessarily change my mind on going to university at all, because I don't think about the money aspect, and the reason being, I think to myself, hey, hopefully I'm going to be successful and I will hopefully pay it back.
Matthew, as a member of the student movement, what are your current opinions on the current tuition fees?
Well, as an active in the student movement in 2010, when the decision was made to move it up to 9,000, obviously I disagreed with that. I disagreed with the whole monetisation of the education system in the higher education and further education in general. It does, I mean, as a couple of the respondents there were saying that it would definitely be a factor in whether you're deciding not to go to university or you are going to university. It shouldn't really be about that. University should be a place to learn, to further learn about the subjects that you're interested in. There shouldn't be a financial factor in that at all. And I mean, we've had some examples. I mean, Germany have recently voted to abolish student fees. We didn't have student fees up until 2001. It was 99 or 2001. So it's not like we haven't had these forever, and it just seems to be a kind of, it's like a progressing thing where services like the health service, transportation, utilities, and now higher education are being privatised, and it's putting pressure on more and more people to actually think more about the financial side instead of the actual reason that they're going.
I mean, everyone has their own right to education, but from £3,000 to £9,000 it's a significant step. But Kalego, you study in America, where obviously the fees are much higher and you have a much different system. How does it compare to what we have here in the UK?
Well, I want to start by saying the biggest thing is to be wary when your government starts treating things like a business that's not a business. Your tuition fees just jump £6,000. They're not talking about raising it any higher than that, or if they do, they have a fixed one-time rate that I'm aware of that they're going to raise it. In America, tuition raises at 6% every year. At every state university in the whole U.S., tuition goes up every year because it's run like a business. And like you said, I completely agree with higher education. Once upon a time was one of those things that you went to better yourself. Like in the 70s in the U.S., you could work part-time all year, all summer, pay for all 4 years of your college. Right now, I couldn't work a full-time job and pay for my 4-year degree. So if I look at your system that you have here and compare it to the U.S., and I have to admit that you guys have it way better from someone that's on the outside looking in.
I mean, Kevin, as a current university student, you must have some views on the situation too.
Yeah, I totally do. I was also some guy on the VT there was saying that he was part of the first year to be hit by the raised tuition fees. I was also part of that year. But I want to clarify a couple of things which Clego and Matthew have said. First of all, we're not really treating universities like a business. Before the election, there was a report put out, I think it was called the Brown Report, and it said, essentially, if you want to make sure that universities still exist in the UK, we need to put university fees up. And so, in line with the evidence and the suggestions and the policy recommendation this person had compiled a huge report on, we've done that. And actually, you've found that more people are going to university. When fees were first introduced by the Labour government, as Matthew said, they were worried that people would be deterred from going to university. Actually, more people went to university, and particularly more people from poorer backgrounds went to university. We've seen a similar sort of thing with the raising tuition fees. Raising tuition fees doesn't put people off at all. I would say, though, that the fault of any complaints about tuition fees, I think, probably lie with universities. Like, I'd be happy to pay £9,000 more if I felt that the university was taking more into account what I want from it. And I don't really think that universities nationwide have taken more of the student side into account.
So, touching on what Matthew said earlier about Germany, Germany have actually decided to scrap their tuition fees, and obviously the German economy is a force, really. Do you think that we can use that as a model, or do you think it would just be complete opposite direction and it would not work here?
Well, I think what you have to bear in mind is we are, as a nation, hugely in debt, and the government can't completely subsidise everything. It's why we have always had prescription charges for things like the NHS, for your prescriptions there. And it's worth pointing out that the government does have a huge subsidy towards higher education. And we are not, like, £9,000 is not how much it costs for a year of university tuition. Clego will point out that in the US it's not subsidised, and that's why you have fees of tens of thousands of dollars a year. That's how much the university tuition in this country costs too. It's just that the government subsidises it. So I don't really think that having the government pay for entirely free higher education is not good. Is good or the way forward, because one, we're in debt and we need to start balancing the books. And also, it's worth pointing out that we should pay something into our tuition, because over the lifetime, graduates earn £100,000 more. I think it's entirely fair that we pay £27,000 for a 3-year undergraduate degree with that in mind.
But shouldn't it be looked at like Germany and some of the other countries that have free higher education? Even though you guys are in debt, is it not worth looking at, at least investigating further of how you can look at what they had, the foundation they laid, and shape it for your country, similar to what we did with our healthcare system, with taking some things into account that you guys do, that Canada do. I'm a believer in, if someone else is willing to try it, that means that they, especially a country as large as Germany, with the economy that they have, if they are willing to take this risk, there must be some research behind it that at least we should take into account, because you say we should pay because we make all this extra money with a degree. So would this country not be getting their money back anyway? Because you would have people graduating, you would have people going to school, and I believe that the people that go to college, they are the ones that they were weeded out in high school. These are not the underachievers. These are the kids that have some kind of a vision. At some point, they know where they want their lives. I believe that if a country was to show that as a whole, education is an investment that's going to keep giving back for generations and generations, we treat it like it's supposed to be treated, instead of saying, well, if you want to be successful because you want to make $100,000, then you need to give us this much money. Well, what about that guy that can't get that money, but he works just as hard as the person that can afford? Why can't he go to school?
I'm going to disagree with you there, because actually anyone can apply for a student loan. We don't, in effect, pay any money. We just say, okay, government, I'm wanting to go to university. They say, right, okay, we'll make sure that you are able to go to it. It's not a cash in hand thing. So people whose parents earn incredibly little, below the poverty line, if they got the grace to go to university, they could, because the students' loan organisation gives them the money. And also, when you're saying things could be looked at, and you brought up the case of Germany, I do think you have to bear in mind that Germany is a huge economic powerhouse within the EU. We still have a lot of debt to pay off. Our economy is growing, and I do believe that the Conservative government are really helping the economy and getting rid of debt and balancing the books and all that sort of stuff. But we still have to be very careful. And like I say, I think it's fair that because I'm going to earn £100,000 over my career, more than someone who doesn't have a degree, I think it's fair that I therefore pay £27,000.
So I got a question for you guys, though, since you guys are from Britain. What is your employment rate or unemployment rate for people with degrees? Because in the States, even though ours is subsidized, you still have 14% of the graduates within 2 years of graduating college default.
The unemployment rate's not great for postgraduates, really, and I think this is where we're now talking about we need to do something about it. So it's not just university education, we need to fund more apprenticeships, which is moving on to our next topic. Are they more beneficial than going to university and facing the fees? We've got a little interview for you that we did with someone who he went to university and he's dropped out and he now does a sponsored degree. And I've just got his views on what's happened with it. So Connor, financially, are you better off now that you've done a sponsored degree, and how will this affect your future prospects now that you're out of uni?
My student loan, I am actually in debt at the minute because of my student loan when I joined Anglia Ruskin back in 2013 on my sports science degree. But luckily I dropped out early enough to only be about £2,000 in debt. Currently in my sponsored degree, my company are paying all my fees for me whilst paying me a salary. And this comes along with on-the-job training, so Monday to Thursday I'm in the office working and learning, and on the Friday I'm at day release to university. I think for me personally this is a better route to go. I know it's over the course of 5 years, but when I was doing my 3-year degree it was too intense, and I wasn't learning on the job.
So what would you recommend to people looking into going to university, and would you say go down the university path or the same path that you chose?
My advice would be to always do a degree in something that you're looking to pursue as a career. Don't just jump into a sponsored degree or an apprenticeship just because they're paying you a salary. It's not all about the money, but on the other hand, if you do get the opportunity to have a sponsored degree or take up an apprenticeship that includes on-the-job training and university education, that is probably the best route to go, as you come out with no student debt, no student loans to repay. You come out with 5 years on-the-job experience, with 5 years of earning a competitive salary for your role. So my advice would be, do a subject that you want, but make sure, but just look in the market to see if there's an opportunity to get an apprenticeship or to get a sponsored degree, because it'll be worth it in the end.
Thank you, Connor. So I think he touched on a couple of important things there. I think one of them was, I think he sort of went to university for the sake of it, and he sort of got dragged into that hole. And also, his sponsored degree, I mean, he still gets his education and he gets a wage, and he's not really that much in debt compared to what we were talking about earlier. What do you think about this, Matthew? Do you think that apprenticeships maybe should be funded more?
Well, there's definitely a case for going to university or getting an apprenticeship. It really depends on what the aspect of the subjects that you're going into. So if you're doing something more academic, that requires a lot of knowledge to be learnt over the 3 years, you're better off going to university, because it's just the most appropriate place to do it. If you're doing something that is more niche and more practical, there is university opportunities for that, but there are also, it's kind of different because it's a bit more turbulent in these kinds of industries. For example, the media industry, where you can actually getting on the job experience is probably more beneficial in terms of gaining contacts and experience on the job. But you've got to be careful with both sides. I mean, for university, what we're just talking about, the fees, yes, you don't have to pay any of this back until you get a job that's over 21 grand, but they are the interest payments which are free, which are 3% a year on top of that. So every year you're not in a job or not earning over £21,000, you're being penalised basically by having that mounted up. I mean, I was in the £3,500 bracket when I went to university. My interest payments now for 2 years on is over £10,000 now I have to pay back when I actually get into a role. And it's harder. I mean, I know what you're saying about £100,000 better off if you go to university, but it's not that clear cut really. The youth unemployment rate is quite bad at the moment, and there's a lot of people that aren't getting into those jobs that they were promised, or like that they're expecting to get on to after graduating university. And this kind of leads into the apprenticeship question as well, because of the rate would be a lot higher. The youth unemployment rate would be a lot higher, but stuff like workfare and apprenticeships and DRR contracts are kind of soaking up a bit of that. So really, if you're looking to get into an apprenticeship, you've got to do a bit of research on that, and make sure that you're getting proper training. There is a prospect of a job at the end of it. You're getting paid properly, because there's a lot of schemes out there which basically are taking money from the government and then not investing it into the apprenticeships themselves.
Kevin, as a member of the Future Conservatives, obviously I think I read somewhere the Conservatives have put 1.8 million into new apprenticeships. So
totally. Apprenticeships have been a massive success story under the Conservative government. Perhaps once upon a time when it was a Labour administration, Matthew's point that a lot of businesses doing apprenticeships weren't putting a huge amount of effort into the apprenticeships. We've changed that. So there are now a huge amount more of apprenticeships. That's really something good. I understand what the guy that you were having the interview with, I understand completely where he's coming from. I think that there is a bit of or there certainly has been a system whereby people say, okay, well, I've done my GCSEs, I've got to go get my A-levels, I've got to go get my undergraduate degree, and then I've got to go find a job. I think that is really damaging, because then people end up in debt, and they end up with a degree which maybe won't be a huge amount of practical use to them. Yeah. So I really think we need to, I'm all for apprenticeships. We need to make sure that they are available. We have done that. We've increased the number of apprenticeships. We've increased the quality of apprenticeships too. So we now do a huge amount of work with businesses to get them involved. So for example, we now can do apprenticeships with JCB, and they're obviously a hugely successful company. Really good to get an apprenticeship with them. We also have made funding available to businesses who want to take on apprentice. I think it's like £1,500 per apprentice. They can also top up wages to make sure that apprenticeships are being really paid rather well. In addition to that, there's the whole thing about, hang on. I've just forgotten what I was about to say, sorry.
It's fine, but I noticed that Matthew was shaking his head in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, I mean, just because there are more apprenticeships doesn't mean that is beneficial. It's widening the range of apprenticeships, but it's being diluted in the process for acceptable companies to run apprenticeships is loosened, and there are a lot of companies that exploit this by just getting handouts from the government to really invest into their own agenda, really, and not actually invest in the apprenticeship. So a lot of young people are being exploited in that way, as they are with 0 hour contracts and things like workfare, which basically it's kind of like what happened with Thatcher in the 80s. You're taking people off the unemployed figures to make it look like, look, employment's going up, youth unemployment's going up, but it's a very deliberate way of actually controlling the figures, really. But it going back to the original point, it really is depending on what subject you're doing.
Yeah. And what are you going to school for? Like internships, apprenticeships, those are good. They teach you how to do. College teach you how to think. And I think that's what makes higher education so powerful is, I'm speaking from a liberal arts school, 1,300 kids is where I go to school at, classroom size of 12 people. We're all talking, learning from each other. that experience of doing stuff is good, but when I got my first internship at NBC, the ability to think is what got me, to perform above and beyond the other interns. Because, you get told to do an assignment, and you just go, you cut the camera on. When I get told to see an assignment, I want to know, all right, I want to shoot it like this because I want to get this message across. I want this, I want all of this because I see the bigger picture. Now I think if you are one of those people that you just want to earn, why go into debt? There's no reason for it. It's crazy talk to say that, I want to make a lot of money, but I'm going to go somewhere that's going to cost me a lot of money in the long run. Like, we don't get the luxury that you guys get of $21,000 you have to earn to pay back the government. They don't care how much money you earn. They don't care if you have a job. After 6 months after graduation, they want their money, and they're coming to get their money. There's no forgiveness. There's no will forget. There's none of that. You have to pay it. And I think that is the hardest thing about being in America post-grad is everyone has an undergraduate degree now. Everyone has a bachelor's. So what are you doing? A work experience. In many careers, it's about who you know. So if you didn't get out there and know anybody,
I think it's healthy not to follow this regime where you go to school, college, and university. I mean, it is. Otherwise, we'd just be a complete country full of the exact same people, and then what will happen to the statistics? So I think it is good that Conservatives are funding the more apprenticeships, but obviously, university will always be an important factor. So if I just quickly spin this back to the original conversation, just a quick final note on it. What do you think should happen for tuition fees in the next coming years?
Tuition fees should be wholly funded by the state. There should be no distractions from the actual thing that you're doing, the purpose that you're doing in university. And it doesn't look likely that will change, that it's more likely to actually go up than go down. But we have to keep making this point, basically, that it's unacceptable, really.
I go back to an example that I used earlier to just paint the craziness that is American education system. And, we can talk about inflation and the economy and everything, but it's still, even when you break the numbers down, it's not logical for someone to be able to work part-time and get a full-time degree 30 years ago and that be impossible now. Like, I understand that, you have to cover your spread somewhere as far as, running a large university goes. But if you have 50,000 kids and you're charging all of those kids $12,000 to $15,000 to go there, your spread is covered. So to keep going up is that's ridiculous to me. And I might just be an idealist, but one day I would like to see education go back to the way Aristotle and Socrates and all the ancient Greeks saw it. You come, if you want to come, you don't pay anything. We all learning from each other.
Kevin?
Well, what you've heard there is the absolute nightmare of American tuition fees, and then the absolute nightmare of Matthew's vision. Because if it was all completely free, what would happen is that the government would have to borrow more money, and what is debt and borrowing but a tax on young people, because they can borrow off the expectation that me, that you, that Clegg, or that Matthew will be paying that back in the future, and it's a tax on young people. There exists a happy medium, and it is the happy medium that the Conservative Party have implemented now that they're in government. £9,000 a year, so on average about £27,000 if you're doing a standard 3-year undergraduate degree. That's completely fine, bearing in mind that you will be making about £75,000 more than that over the course of your career thanks to your undergraduate degree. But totally don't think that we should be saying that everyone should go to university. Apprenticeships are a wonderful thing. We need to be encouraging more people into doing that. We are doing that. And the point which I'd forgotten, which I'll just bring up again, is that they are now longer lasting, up to a year. And actually, they do go up to degree level now. So I don't accept Matthew's point that he raised earlier that apprenticeships are nonsense and just fodder for young people to slave on.
Go on, after you, Matthew.
I didn't say no. There's some very good apprenticeships. I've met people who are very good apprenticeships, and there's a prospect of a very secure job at the end of it. It's not a generalised thing that I'm talking about here, but it does seem to happen in certain areas. It's about really everyone having the right to go to university if they want to, and everyone having a right to get a fair apprenticeship if they want to.
And they do.
And it's not really if you have to pay. It's kind of like ladening people with debt before they've even got a mortgage or anything like that, had children, and you've got that pressure
That's
on
not
you.
true, though. You start paying it back once you have a good job at about
Yeah, but
£21,000 a year more.
when
You're not laden with debt immediately. It's only once you're in employment.
Yeah,
and
but
only
when
once
will
that
this happen,
employment
though?
is good.
When will this happen, though? It will get. I mean, look, there's people like, it's my age now. I'm 23. There's still people who have very insecure work lives at the moment, whether that be on part-time jobs, 0-hour contracts, working in industries and sectors that have absolutely nothing to do with their degrees. There are not enough jobs out there. It's not about government debt or anything like that, or we can't afford to do this and that. We need to invest in our young people, and that's not happening at the moment. A lot of people are being left on the sidewalk, using the American term, and it's it needs to be sorted out. We can't expect people to we'll just land a job and then we're going to pay it back.
So with this 21,000 salary, that is the point where they start retrieving their money back. Do you think that is a good standing point? Do you think it should go off salary, or do you think maybe other factors should be into?
Well, obviously, ideally, you would pay nothing, so it wouldn't be eliminated at all. But it is better than just immediately having to pay everything back when you're not in a position to do so. You get sent a letter saying, look, are you in a job yet? If you're not, then please indicate. And then so it does. It is. Some things about it are quite beneficial and fair. But it's the fact that you've got this debt hanging over you. I mean, we did some calculations on this. A person doing a 3-year degree who was living away from home would expect to land at about £48,000 in debt. I mean, that's a mortgage figure. That you can't expect people to have this debt hanging over them for basically the rest of their lives, because it's like the payments are so small every month that you're going to have this going on for a lot of years, unless you miraculously end up in some kind of high-paid job like a lot of the Tories do.
People do end up in. There are plenty of Tories who have less high-income salaries themselves. But you sort of falsely linking everything to, you're always going to be in a poor job. Our economy is growing at the fastest rate in the G8. There are going to be more jobs available and more highly paid jobs thanks to this government. It was the Labour government which completely destroyed any hope and opportunity for young people, forced them into going into university, which might not have been appropriate, as we all seem to agree on. What you say there about, if they're out of unemployment, then they're still going to be paying it out of employment, they're still going to be paying it back. That's completely false. It works just like a tax. So if at the moment your salary drops below 21,000, they say, okay, we're not going to take any money out of you, and they do scale with your income. So you won't be stuck paying it for years if you do end up in a high salary job.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but it's been a really heated debate, and I actually enjoyed the discussion about different things. But so that's all we have time for this week. Thanks to our guests, Kalego Hips, Matthew Giles, and Kevin Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you.